Welcome to More Than Our Story, where we strive to inspire through sharing stories. I'm Daniel Height, and today I'm joined by Jerry Dunn, whose prolific running career began in 1975. Over the past 50 years, he's been breaking world records, pioneering ultra running, and founding nationally acclaimed races, earning himself the nickname America's Marathon Man. Jerry, it's an honor. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. Pleasure to be here.
So I recently saw a video of you down at the end of the world marathon in Belize. How did that go?
It went really well. I ran the course solo on Saturday, and then on Sunday, the day of the event, I was playing the role of the supporter and encourager, and I got on my bicycle and put on my jester's outfit and just did about 40 miles riding up and down the course, encouraging all the other runners. So it went well in all regards.
It looked wet.
Okay, it was wet on Saturday when I ran solo, but Sunday it was good weather all throughout the event.
Okay, great. So I want to take things back to the beginning, back when you were 29. That barefoot beach run challenge. What was it about that hooked you so much on running?
I ran for the first time because I was working in a restaurant at night, running on the beach not running on the beach in the daytime. And a friend of mine, a lifeguard, just kept hounding me to run. And I told my friend that I didn't want to run. Finally, just to quiet him, I ran a half a mile on the beach barefoot with him and the other lifeguards. And it just like came over me that I'm meant to be doing this. And so for the next 2 years, only ran on the beach barefoot and developed a foundation for the sport and the physiology of running barefoot on the sand. And it was kind of, I call it the birth of the Marathon Man, because I had no idea at the time that I was going to be running still 50 years later and having done all the things I've done. But there was just some connection that was almost magical when I finally said, okay, let me try this running on the beach thing. So that's the beginning of my story. Yes.
And then you reinvented yourself in your early 30s. You committed yourself to sobriety and a healthier lifestyle. What was the catalyst for that? And why do you think running endurance sports, and particularly your story, are so often associated with personal transformation?
The first part of that question was, I just decided after my 37th birthday drunk, and I got up the next morning and decided that I wanted to see what it would be like to have control of my life again without alcohol. And it was as simple as that to make that decision. Fortunately, I've not had any issues with that. The second part of your question is the answer. It brought discipline to my life. It gave me a sense of I'm okay kind of thing. I mean, I found myself disciplined and not looking at myself as a drunk anymore. I'm now a runner, and my self love and my self concept began to grow. And it's also, endurance, long distance runners and whatever endurance sport, there's some sense of I'm going out to punish myself, knowing that it's going to be difficult. And there's kind of a connection between that and the former addiction is, I'm still feeding that, I need to do something that's, going to be difficult, but the rewards of that are going to be good. And so that's the answer.
You became addicted to running, I guess.
Well, yes, I did. And I proved that by just, all the stuff on my resume that I did that was addictive. And I've written some things about, no addiction is really a good addiction. I mean, I called it my positive addiction for a long time. And yes, that was true. It was more positive than being addicted to alcohol. But, some of the result, I lost a marriage because of that positive addiction. I mean, my whole life was focused on that thing called running. And I let everything else, go to the periphery. And my whole focus was, I need to run. I need to run more. I need to run far. I need to run better than other people. I was just, it became an addictive behavior, which, as I said, is not a good thing, So I went through that stage of being addicted to running. People would always ask me, what are you running from? And I would always say, I'm running towards something. And I continue to run toward kind of an elusive goal. But what I was really running towards was self-awareness and self-love, and that was the good part of the positive addiction. It at least led me to a better place in my life.
So long before ultra running became what it is today, you were completing record-breaking marathon streaks and endurance challenges. Where did that idea and the determination come from?
First off, I always like to say I did all that before Forrest Gump. It came from my motto for 40 years has been, don't limit your challenges, challenge your limits. And when I found out early on in my career that I was not fast, I wasn't going to be competing, I also discovered that I could run long distances day after day. And so I just started to, I'm a pretty creative person too. So I looked around and saw what other people were doing, and I decided that I would see if I could run across the state of Indiana in 3 days at 50 miles a day. And that worked. And then I thought, well, I did 3 states this year. Let me see if I can do the country next year. So that's when I thought about, I called it shore to shore in 104. So I took 104 days and ran from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., all in support of Habitat for Humanity. And then the 100th running of the Boston Marathon came along, and I knew that I could do back-to-back marathons on a daily basis. So the new challenge became to see if I could run the Boston Marathon course on 26 consecutive days, the last one being the 100th running of the Boston Marathon. So I found out that I was able to run long distances daily, and I just began creating challenges in that particular arena. And my PR stands at 29 days in a row in New York City. I ran in Central Park on the original New York City Marathon course, which was in Central Park. I did that every morning for 28 days. And then on the 29th day, I ran the New York City Marathon. So that's my record of, I'm not really answering your question directly. I'm running by my resume, but that's part of what this is all about, I think. But and it put me in a league of my own, if you will. I mean, there were lots of other people doing outrageous running things, but I was kind of a pioneer in that particular, how many of these can I do in a row, and that sort of thing. So it went from an addiction to a lifestyle to me wanting to. I'm an only child, so I need to be noticed, and everybody liked me, So I started thinking about, okay, how can I elevate this game that I've created for myself? And I just, kept going and going, and it all culminated in my last big adventure, which was to see. I declared that after the 29 days in a row, as I was leaving New York City, I had an interview with Keith Olbermann, and when he used to have a sports show, and he said, well, now what are you going to do next? And I hadn't had that question posed to me before. So I said, I'm not sure, but the turn of the century is coming up. I'm going to have to do something pretty outrageous. So I declared a few days after that I was going to run 200 marathons in the year 2000. And I ended up completing 186 marathons in 1 year, all on official marathon courses. So, that was the pinnacle of my challenging myself, because I haven't really thought of anything, better than that I could do.
So I'm noticing that all of those, just looking through your resume here, those were all around 2 to 3 years apart. Was that intentional?
No, it was just, it wasn't intentional. The run across the United States was in 91. And the next thing I think was, the big thing was when I realized that the Boston Marathon was going to be 100 years old. And I'm just this, this guy still needing attention out in South Dakota, who's a kind of a nobody. I mean, I've done some things, but so that's how 96 happened. So there was really no like recovery time or planning on a chronological basis for anything. It was just more spontaneous, and there's an opportunity to do something. Let me take advantage of that.
So I'm going to go back to your shore to shore in 104, as you referred to it. What was your pacing strategy? How did you break up so much running to ensure you didn't injure yourself?
Well, my plan to a marathon a day, because I'm the marathon man. So I ran 26 miles a day, 5 days a week, took Sundays off. But I did get injured after I wasn't experienced at mountain running. And when I came across out of California, and I started having a few issues with Achilles problems and stuff. So I took a few days off, rested up, and then started out again, and got to Indiana, my home state, and the same injury popped up again. Anyway, so I called for my bicycle, and I cycled for a few days, and then I had to finish on the run. So the C&O Canal path goes into Washington, D.C., and that's where the JFK 50 miler is. And I had run that before. So I've forgotten your basic question, though. What?
It was really just asking how you managed to pace the shore to shore without getting injured. But apparently you did get injured.
I did,
Yeah.
yes. But my take on that is I've set out to get from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. under my own power. And yes, I'm no longer able to run for a while, but bring me my bike and I'm still going to accomplish what I set out to do, which is cross the country under my own power. And, that was my rationalization for not being able to run the whole way. But I still, and most often when I set a goal like that, I'll figure out how to achieve it. It may not be what the first vision was, but this is reminding me of something that Crazy Horse said: "Never forget your dream." And whatever I need to do to make that dream complete, I'll do it. And so that's what I did.
So you mentioned something there. I want to transition now to your career as a race founder and a community builder.
Mm-hmm.
You founded and directed 2 ultra races in South Dakota, the Deadwood Mickelson Trail and the Lean Horse Ultra. What is it about South Dakota that you loved so much?
Okay, one point of clarification: 2 marathons and 2 ultra marathons. Deadwood Mickelson Trail was my first creation. It's a marathon. 3 years later, I looked around, and having run the Vermont Trail 100, which was the easiest 100 in the United States at the time, that's when I decided to create an easier ultra on the same trail that I had created, the Deadwood Mickelson Trail Marathon. But the answer to your question is I'd run lots of places in the world. And when I first moved to South Dakota and found the Mickelson Trail and ran out there, it was like, I need other runners to see this. This is beautiful. And the story about I'll make this quick, but there was an ultra runner who I met on my 49th birthday who had just finished running what they used to call, I'm blanking on the name, but if you could do all 4 100s in one season, you were quite the stud. And I met him at a 5K, and he said that people in the area had been trying to get him to create a marathon. He wasn't interested in doing that. And I said, well, can I help you? And he said, yeah. So we had a couple of meetings together. He disappeared from the planet pretty much, and I'm left with anyway, I was handed the opportunity to create the Deadwood Mickelson Trail Marathon in this place that I wanted other people to see, and that was beautiful. And so, and I had, in my professional running career, I'd been to hundreds of marathons and expos, and I mean, I'm business-wise and entrepreneurial. So I just said, thank you. I now have the opportunity to create my own marathon in a beautiful place. And I just pulled it all together, and we celebrated 26 years this year of the Deadwood Mickelson Trail Marathon. So,
So the last couple of years have seen a real rapid spread in the popularity and commercialization of ultra running. Are you worried about the sport moving away from its roots?
I think it already has, and it's disappointing in one sense, but I also realize that the world moves forward. And what the saddest part for me is that the ultra world used to be a community of renegades, if you will, mostly, and we were just out to prove things to ourselves, and we were kind of like a family, and we were concerned about our time, and we were concerned about all that other stuff, but it was more just a challenge for ourselves, and we were notorious for helping each other finish those goals out on the course. And now those things still exist, but it's so commercialized, and all the media attention given to the superstars and all that other stuff, and not so much the 80% of the pack who were people like me that just were challenging themselves to get it done. And there's no stopping it, but I'm kind of sad to see it transition into what it is. And even one of my events, the Lean Horse Ultra, it had the reputation of being a family reunion. I had repeat runners coming all the time, and we did a lot of stuff socially together before the race and after the race. And the person that bought that from me turned it into more like what things are today, where you mail in your registration, you get you come up, you should do the race, and there's no personality of races so much anymore. It's just something to check off the list that, yeah, I was able to do the Cocodona 250. So the answer to your question is, I'm sad about the evolution of the sport, but there's not anything I can do about that. Except, this segues, I'll make this brief, but I'm in Belize right now, and there aren't any extreme events in this country right now. And I've already got the whole plan laid out, and hopefully I will introduce an extreme triathlon next year to the country of Belize. So the juice, I'm passionate again, like I was back when I created the Deadwood Mickelson Trail Marathon the first time around. And point is, I'm going to at least start it out as that, with that same feeling of respect for the environment, respect for the fellow participants. And it's more, when I started Deadwood, I said it's more than an event, it's an experience. And, to come to Belize and swim in the Caribbean and and the run is going to be in the jungle, and the cycle is going to be getting from the coastline into the jungle. And it's going to be unlike most other ultra events out there. So,
Well, I want to hear about that immediately, because that's going to be on my bucket list.
okay, well, I'll tell you what. Well, in our conversation afterward, we'll get into that. But yeah, I'm excited, and I'm talking it up. I'm a good salesperson, and I've been talking to the people that are going to be influential in making this happen, including the director of the End of the World Marathon and all of his staff, and a few of the athletes that I've met in Belize, and they're all in agreement that bring it on. This is going to be great. So we'll see.
So Jerry, you have a tradition of celebrating your birthdays with endurance challenges. You ran 60 miles for your 60th, 65 miles on your 65th, and 70 kilometers, I believe, for your 70th. Um,
Right.
do you have a favorite one?
Um, uh, and I did so, let's see, a favorite one. When people ask me what's your favorite marathon, and I always respond with whichever one I'm running. And it's kind of the answer to this question. I mean, um, probably of those you mentioned, that would be the the 65th, um, um, primarily because I had other things going on at the end of that. I created a craft beer, lean horse ale, and at the finish of my 15 hours of running my 65 miles, we had a birthday party for me at Crow Creek Brewery in Spearfish, South Dakota, and we introduced lean horse ale, which actually never got any much farther than that. But that was a really fun one because there were things going on besides just me doing my shtick. And but I 75 was good too because I combined running and cycling in that one. But I'm going to be 80 in 5 weeks, and I just 3 days ago figured out what I'm going to do for that one, and it is an 80-mile bike ride in Baños. In Ecuador. So uh, they're all good, and I'm creating one for my upcoming 80th birthday.
I'm sensing a theme here. Do you typically do a lot of bike touring, and does that play into your endurance training?
Um, I do a fair amount of bike touring, not a lot, but I have to note that since 2000, I haven't done any serious running events, or I'm still a semi-regular runner, but I transitioned to, I do a lot more cycling in the last 5 years than I ever have in my life. And it's not because I can still, I did a short 3 mile this morning, so I still run regularly, but I don't do any of the endurance stuff that I used to do so much. And I've given myself permission to be a marathon man who's now a cyclist.
And you don't just run for yourself. You've used your platform and your moniker of the America's Marathon Man to help raise funds and awareness for charities like Habitat for Humanity and the Special Olympics. When did you first realize that running could be used as a platform for social good?
Um, Actually, it was introduced to me by the woman who suggested back in 1989 that I do a run for Habitat for Humanity. And that's kind of when it clicked for me that, yes, I do have this reputation. Yes, I do attract attention, and it's all about me. And it's also kind of correlates with the long journey that I've been on of kind of dropping my ego and think about others more than I think about myself. And that was one of the first ones. And I I really believed in what Habitat was doing. I was offered this opportunity, so I did that, and then I did the one for Habitat across the United States. Um, and all the marathons I've created, we are philanthropic with. It's a business. I made money at it, but I was very generous with the money. Well, back to my birthday runs. On my 65th, I did most of it in an indoor gym, and I raised $3,000 for the middle school who needed a climbing wall. And then on another one, the Special Olympics thing on my 70th birthday, that the money I generated from that, I was able to give $5,000 to the Special Olympic baseball program in South Dakota. So it just, and I've always been a giving person, and when I put those together, it just felt right and felt good. And I'm still doing it. This one that I mentioned that's coming up on January 29th. My friend, there's a after school program that's more than an after school program, but everybody needs funding. So I'll be sending you a request pretty soon for my GoFunding campaign to sponsor a mile of my 80 miles worth of cycling for this organization in Baños, Ecuador. So it just feels right. And, we all need to help each other in any way we can. And this is one of my ways to be able to, contribute what I have to somebody who needs it more than I do.
So over your career, you've logged, I think it's 50,000 miles of training and competition. What do you attribute that longevity to?
Genetics, determination. I think that I think I was born to run. I mean, because I've been aware of my body mechanics from the get-go, and so I've always paid attention to trying to do the best I can with what I have in my body. And I've eaten fairly well all these years. I am a practitioner of cold water therapy, and I have been for about 45 years. I just I want to say it just almost comes naturally, and I don't have to do too many conscious things to keep it flowing properly. But and the desire to continue to be active, I think, is a part of why I can still be active, because I know that you got to keep moving in some fashion is one of the secrets to being healthy and longevity. So that wasn't a real good answer to the question, but
It was perfect.
So
So would you like to speak about your new project? We spoke about it last time.
Running
Is
Current?
it ready to launch, or
Pardon me?
is it ready to launch, or?
The site is live, runningcurrent.com, but I will speak about its concept. Running, well, you don't know. I've had a lot of different issues over the course of my 50 years of running, and I've also learned a lot of life lessons while I've been out on the road running. And what Running Current is all about is a platform for people similar to your platform of sharing their stories of how running or extreme sport has impacted their life, other than awards and podiums and medals and all that other stuff. What has running, how has running changed your life? And I think a place to share those stories is valuable for, as you well know, when people read my story, your story, other people's stories about what saved me, kind of thing. How did I get through that? Or even more than that, I mean, you learn a lot about yourself when you're out on the road for half your life, and if you're willing to take a look at who you are, and you're alone, you've got time to think, and your life can change because of the fact that you're in motion and moving. And I just think it's important that we share our stories and hopefully inspire and encourage other people to get through what they're trying to get through. And by the way, running will help you do that. That kind of thing. So
It's a beautiful project. I love that. I'm going to promote it below on my podcast and just everywhere.
Okay. Let me throw in one other thing. I also created another website, which is called theleanhorse.com. It's not live yet. My other branding nickname is Lean Horse, and we won't get into that. But I've struggled with how much I want to throw my story at the world, and so I've created one platform where other people can bring their stories, and we can share and grow and be motivated. But my story is unlike anybody else's. Everybody's story is unlike anybody else's, but I think mine is very unique. And I'm a good writer, and I have lots of stuff that I would like to share with people just for the entertainment sake of it. So that's what leanhorse.com is going to be about. It's going to be about, me and all this stuff that I've done, and some of the lessons that I've learned, I will be in a more entertaining format than at Running Current. So I'm excited, and I've wanted to write forever, and I haven't really done it. I've got all these things that I have written but never published anywhere. So I'm just going to have fun telling kind of like my memoirs in short little bits of, yes, I did that, and this is what happened. All that kind of review of my 50 years of running.
Well, we'll have to connect, and you'll have to let me know when that goes live so I can push it out.
Okay. Thank you.
So selfish question here. I signed up for my first 100-kilometer trail race this coming spring with 2 friends.
Yeah.
What's the one piece of advice you would give us?
Enjoy it.
Excellent.
I mean, I know you well enough. I mean, you're not, didn't just decide to do this. I mean, you've been training for it. And I mean, seriously, if you can come to the start line, know all the things that that it's not going to be pretty at some point, all the things you're going to have to go through, but enjoy that, whatever it is. I'm flashing on many years ago. I heard the expression "embrace the pain," and I couldn't wrap my head around that for a long time. But and I'm also now a person who tries to live in the moment. So yes, my legs are killing me right now, but I'm just going to embrace that and keep moving forward. And there's actually some joy in knowing that. I'm going to quick sidetrack, but cold water therapy I mentioned, and I just read a few years ago that the psychological benefits of cold water therapy is this: you're about to you train your mind to do something that is going to be uncomfortable, but you also know that when you have finished that experience, the rewards are going to be worth the decision to go ahead and do something uncomfortable. And so that is relative, I think, in what we're talking about, because that running 100 kilometers is not going to be the most comfortable thing you've ever done. But you also know that when you get to the, you're going to have bragging rights, and you're going to have personal satisfaction that you did it. And that's all because you chose to do something that wasn't necessarily easy or comfortable. And so back to just enjoyed that whole experience, the good parts, the bad parts, the creative parts where you got to figure out, what do I do now? This is happening. And, just embrace that and enjoy it, savor it.
Well, Jerry, you are a pioneer and a legend in the sport of running. Without any question, you've lived up to your motto. And you've managed to turn running into a tool for reinvention and a platform for social good, truly earning yourself your nickname, America's Marathon Man. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to speak with you. Thank you for joining today and sharing your incredible, inspiring story.
Well, you're welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So, namaste.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.